Hi, this is Dr. Michelle Robin with Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience. And I believe if you'll change one thing a month, one thing for the next 12 months, you'll change your life forever. Thanks for joining me on the journey. Well, hey, good afternoon, everybody. Wow, we are halfway through the year, July 1st, 2020. Where does time go? That's just absolutely insane. Well, this is always a fascinating week for me, especially the last 7 or 8 years. And 5 years ago this week, I had my bike accident. So I've been doing some reflecting. And so before I get to my guest today, I wanted to share some of the reflections that have been on my heart lately. And it's really around words, of course, you know me, words. And the first word that came to mind really is overwhelmed. And I think that ties into what we're going through right now with COVID-19 and the political tension and the Black Lives Matter movement. And there's just so much going on. And then if you already had a little bit of anxiety like I manage, plus then you run a business. And so you have layer upon layer upon layer, and it can be really easy to be overwhelmed. And earlier this week, I was feeling really heavy, and I was talking to some of my women business friends. And I thought, gosh, if I'm feeling this heavy, just feeling like there's blankets of weight on me, there must be a lot going on in the universe right now. And so just to acknowledge it out loud makes me want to be able to take a deep breath. So so first of all, whenever you're going through something, and I remember distinctly 5 years ago, you know, not being able to really move my legs and being flat on my back for a better part of 2 weeks, and all the uncertainty. And I remember somebody would say to me, Michelle, do you think you'll be able to adjust again? And I had not thought about that yet. And so, and we think about, are we ever going to be able to travel again? Are we ever going to be able to go out and about without a mask? Are we ever going to be able to flow freely? And here I am 5 years later. And by the way, I can adjust again. I can do everything I did before. It took me a good couple years to get my body back to where it needed to go. And then it took a good 4 years before I got my mind back from that head injury. And so it has been a ride. And so as you're feeling overwhelmed, I go back to 5 years ago when it was just to take the next step. Whether it's to call a friend, whether it's to text a friend. I had a friend reach out to me out of the blue today, and it was such a lovely thought. And I was so grateful to have her reach out to me. I didn't expect it. It's not common for her to do that. And so I would say take the next step and move with faith and not fear. And I want to tell you, I get frozen. I'm a loyalist, skeptic person. And so, but I do freeze because I try to get a lot of information. So, and I'm pretty transparent. So you're hearing my heart today. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, take the next step and include self-care in there. Probably the biggest gift of my accident has been self-care. There's just some things that are non-negotiable for me. Today I'm working from home. I'm recording this podcast. I got adjusted this morning. I'm going to get a massage this afternoon. I'm trying to take care of the little things so that I can enjoy a holiday weekend. 5 years ago, my holiday weekend shifted because of my accident. Last year on this day, July 1st, we were scrambling because we had a ransom attack at our office. And if you ask me about July 2019, I'll never forget it because I spent the whole month trying to recover from that incident. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, like I am, and some of my clients and friends are feeling, take a deep breath and take the next step. And the next point that I really wanted to share with you today, and this will be coming out in my blog as well, is about barnacles. And that's a funny word. I've never actually ever talked about barnacles, but I think about barnacles, kind of like on a boat, and there are these items that attach to the boat, but they're really not part of the boat. There are outside forces that have attached to it. And so think about the barnacles that we have in life right now. Maybe, in my case, it could be people coming in and there's a lot of heaviness. And so I always say people come in and throw up all over me. And because that's my job. My job is to help listen to people, help nurture them, help care for them, and then help give them guidance. And I don't take that lightly. I think when you give somebody guidance, it's just, I do that with a lot of intention. And so as you're thinking about the barnacles of life, and Deborah hopefully will talk about this, I'm queuing you up, Deborah, a little bit for this, as how do you start to clear off the barnacles? And so it might be physically where you actually take a dry brush it's like getting off a callus off your foot, where you take one of those things they use a lot at the pedicure place, and you scrub off some of the calluses. And so take that brush and start to move it. You might even just take your hands and start to move the energy towards your heart, and then shake it off, and so that you can let off some of the barnacles, whether it's a physical barnacle, it could be weight. I'm actually in the middle of a little bit of a detox because I have packed on some weight since my accident, and I worked really hard at staying at a certain weight because my family genetics battles obesity. So think about those barnacles. And then I've been talking about this and dripping this out a little bit over this Rhythm and Resilience series about ABC days. There's A days where you're just really rocking it. And then there's B days and there's C days. I like to use the analogy of your teeth, and I'll give a shout out to my dentist, John Humphrey. He's got a great hygienist, Dr. John Humphrey, who's a what do they call that? The holistic dentist. I'm going to use those words. And you think about your teeth. A C day is you get it brushed probably. And then a B day is maybe brushed and flossed and maybe water pick. And then an A day could be use a tongue scraper and you oil pull and you brush and you floss and use your water pick and things like that. So remember, there's A days, B days, and C days in every aspect on the quadrants: mechanical, chemical, energetical, psycho, spiritual. And then the other part on this is give yourself some grace. Really give yourself some grace as you're navigating this newness. I know people say, do you ever think we'll be the same again? I don't know how we could go back and be the same again. Likewise, if you're not feeling a little overwhelmed and anxious right now, I'm not sure how that's happening. Maybe you are using some substances to help bring you down a little bit, because I know most people that I'm in touch with are feeling the anxiety and the uncertainty at just a whole new level that we've ever felt before. And then the last point I wanted to share before I get to my guest today on small changes, big shifts is joy. I've been really thinking about this word joy and thinking about how do you add more joy to your life. And it's continuing to be reminded of what brings you joy, but you've got to be able to dial in and feel that intention in your heart. And I loved last week, my friend Judy, who we actually met serving a youth girls group years ago. So I'm giving you a shout out, Judy. And Judy said, I love the joy I see on your face when you talk about my new guy, Jordan. I've adopted one of my new clients. I have all these different kids, and I've got a new kid of last week, and Jordan and his wife, Ashton. And I've told them I'm going to be your baby's godparent, because I just love these kids, because they're just reminding me what it's like to really value self-care, but also be so vulnerable. So think about this week as we are celebrating. It's interesting. I was talking with one of my friends, Willie, yesterday, and we were talking about this this week, which is about freedom, right? Independence Day and celebrating freedom. And yet so many people in America they're not free. They're not free, whether it's a Black Lives Matter movement, or they're not free from the negative thinking that keeps them stuck, that Liza talked about last week, and they're not free from the uncertainty. They're not free from their past, or they're not free because they're so worried about the future. And so I really encourage you to think about what brings you joy in this now moment, so that you can be free and you could move your life forward, taking that next step at a time. So anyhow, those are some of my thoughts around my 5-year anniversary of my bike accident. I know some of you got online to hear me Monday morning because I was trying a new platform, StreamYard, and I just talked away like you were hearing me. And my team told me it didn't come through. So anyhow, we're going to get it figured out. We're just taking the next best step. Anyhow, today joining me on Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience is Deborah Grayson. She is a licensed marriage family therapist and author of Building Healthy Relationships, a workbook for parents and step parents. I'm going to call it also bonus parents. And I had her workbook on my desk for about a year. She's got a lot of wisdom. She's formerly of Kansas City. She's now practices in Minneapolis and works with the community to create partnerships and connections with agencies and organizations committed to overall well-being and health. Deborah, hey, welcome to Small Changes, Big Shifts. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Happy to be here.
Well, thanks for joining me. When did we have a cup of tea before you left from Minneapolis? What month was that in? I have no idea.
I left in last July, so a year ago. So I'm thinking it was last spring. Yeah, time flies.
So for all those people that feel like, holy moly, are we ever going to get through this? The next 5 years are going to go like this. And even the next year, because it feels like I just sat down and had a cup of tea with you before you went back to Minneapolis. Or
Right.
so first of all, why are you a marriage and family therapist? How'd you get involved in that?
Yeah. Well, I first started out being a teacher and working in the classroom with kids because I love working with kids, always have. And then I realized, that wasn't really what I was passionate about, was working academically with kids. The kids would talk to me about things that were going on in their homes with their parents. And that was really what I got excited about, is change, movement, helping one part of a family and then seeing change, the ripple effect, I like to call it, across a family or throughout a family or throughout a generation. So I just got excited, and then I went into marriage and family therapy, and it was the right fit for me. I still got to work with kids, but I also got to work with parents and other family members, so that any one person who is interested in change, even if they feel stuck, can create change for themselves. So, kids would come to me and say, well, I want to do this, but my parents won't do this, or I want to come to therapy, but my parents don't want me to, or aren't interested. And so just starting with the person who's interested in change can have just a dramatic effect, not only on them, but on everyone around them. I like to call that the ripple effect. And so I get excited. I learn. I mean, I've been listening to you. I've been part of the Wellness Consortium when I lived in Kansas City. I just feel lucky to be around people who are also interested in learning. So I'm always looking for nuggets to continue to learn for myself, and then I share that with people around me.
Nuggets, barnacles. That's
Barnacles. I have not heard barnacles. Yeah,
barnacles.
yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's do a little education on therapists and the different types, because people talk about all different types. There's family therapy, and then there's group therapy, and then there's individual therapy, and then there's different types of therapy. I don't even know all the types. So give us just an overview about the therapy field, and then talk about what why marriage and family therapist is different, and why somebody would seek somebody out like you.
Sure. So there are lots of different, as you said, areas within the field of therapy. And a lot of it has to do with training and focus. So for me, as a marriage and family therapist, my focus is on relationships. The relationships that people have within the family, the dynamics with one another, as well as outside the family. So I don't take an individual approach, whereas a individual therapist, it can be a psychologist or a social worker, would take an individual approach, looking at one person in the family and what's happening for them, not in relationship to everything else. So anytime, even if I'm meeting with one individual or a kid in the family or a parent, I'm always looking at the dynamics, understanding that the system, it's a system. One change creates another change, creates another change. So that's why I chose to be a marriage and family therapist. You can look at the different, what I call subsystems, parts of the family, strengthening those, working on those. They all affect change for the entire family. So parts of the whole, if that makes sense.
That's a good reason why we get along, because kind of like when I see somebody from a chiropractic perspective, you think, okay, well, low back pain, Louise Hay would say, is related to some anger and resentment.
Yes.
Or not having a good foundation. So you can see why people are having more back pain right now, because our foundation is shaking and we don't know where it's going. And so that uncertainty creates more pain in the body, manifests in the body. So that's fascinating to think about it that way. So, I'm sure there's some families that are going through some interesting opportunities right now, because we've got college kids that have come home. We also have people that are working from home. I think you said there's 5 people working from your home right now?
Yes, 5 people, all working from home, all working, which is good, and from home. Lots of adjustments. You talked about adjustment. Lots and lots of things to adjust to, and people can feel heavy, full, especially those of us who work with people, right? Because we're managing our own, as well as then working and trying to be effective with others. So absolutely lots and lots of adjustment to being not only at home, losses, changes, needing to be flexible. How do we manage every day? You talked about how you do that, and I know we've talked about that before. Everybody does it differently, but the most important relationship you have is the relationship you have with yourself. That's to start with, because nobody's going to be effective in any work, family, other, sphere if we do not feel grounded. And people do that in different ways, but I'm seeing that during this time of people working from home and COVID and race and changes, that people feel freed up actually to do maybe more of that than they ordinarily would. Maybe it's the lack of commuting time. Maybe it's the working from home and being able to take an hour here or there. But I see a lot of that. And so I'm excited by that.
Well, definitely, Ripple. So on this show, Small Changes, Big Shifts, we like to celebrate, guide, connect, which provide hope, and create a ripple, hopefully to reach 1 billion people. That small changes can lead to big shifts. So thanks for being part of that today. So I've got a handful of questions for you as we kind of dial in and give our people some guidance of what they could do. So we're celebrating you and celebrating the difference you're making in the world, and celebrating your book, Building Healthy Family Relationships, a workbook for parents and step parents. How can they get that book, by the way?
So they can get it from my website, which is just my name. And my website is my name, www.debraorbuchgrayson.com, or they can go on Amazon. And really the reason why I did the work, why I created the workbook, is because anytime we want to make a change, it isn't just hearing it once, right? It's habits. It's hearing it over and over again and being reminded and having it be reinforced. And so that's why I wanted to create something that people can write in. It's concrete, not just listen to, but look at. We need something right there, tangible, by our bedside maybe, so that we can think about, oh, what do I do if my back hurts? Or what do I do if I have a conflict with my partner?
Mm-hmm.
But then maybe we need to look at it again and just be reminded of it. And so none of us is perfect, and nobody gets it the first time. So we're just learning. It's about learning and practicing. And I know that's what you talk about as well, but I'm very much into practice, and mistakes are opportunities. So when it doesn't go well, what do we learn? What do we learn from it this time? And what are we going to do differently the next time? So thinking about it, dialing into it, as you like to say, and then maybe even writing about it. So I'm big into workbooks.
Well, great. And that, just for you know, that'll be in the show notes for everybody that's listening today. We're doing this show live, and then tomorrow to come out actually on the podcast, where you can find on iTunes and all the other places you find podcasts. As also, you can just go to my website, drmichellerobin.com, and you can also download it. If you want to get the emails that tell you when we're doing this, you can sign up there as well. So Deborah, okay, so here's the guidance. What trends and needs are you seeing presently with families and parents? And I want you to go from the little bitty itty bitties to the people that can't be with parents, maybe that are transitioning, or that are in places they can't get to.
Right. So there's a lot. And as there is with any change, right? So for some people, it's just working, not just, but it's working from home and having kids at home if they have kids, and managing all that, time, space, place, distance, boundaries, and so on. For some, it's not being able to see people who they love and feeling scared about that. You talked earlier about fear, and will this ever go away? Anxiety, worries. For a lot of people, it can also be just general, even though people are at home and things are changing, it's just general family conflict. Loss of what they thought it would be, kids going to college, milestone graduation, how do you celebrate it? All sorts of things. The trend that I'm most concerned about that people seem to be experiencing the last 3 months is isolation. No surprise, right? So we all have a need for belonging, to be part of something, and you create all sorts of things that people are part of. And it's different, and when it's virtual, it can still provide a sense of belonging, but people are needing to figure out, well, how do I see people? I'm feeling isolated, I'm feeling lonely. And so part of having a workbook or a therapist or a chiropractor or somebody you connect with regularly is understanding in perspective that you're not alone. So people are feeling alone, and continuing to use the resources that they have or are out there, connecting to those, even virtually, can be very, very positive. So that's what I'm seeing is isolation, maybe discouragement, like you said at the beginning of your show, lack of perspective, worry, when is this going to end? And just feeling comfortable with lack of knowing, right? So we don't know, is it going to be 2 more weeks? Is it going to be 4 more weeks? Is it going to dip and up and down? And it's probably going to be all of those. And that's extremely challenging, right? Dealing with the unknown.
I want to talk about isolation and loneliness. So over the last few years, I've been keenly aware that I see people that are depressed and have anxiety and loneliness. And how do those waffle? How do those all relate to each other?
So it's a great question. So I like to look at it on a spectrum. So we can feel isolated, we can feel anxious, nervous, and sometimes it might be situational. Of course, it makes a lot of sense right now, dealing with what we're going through. But if it persists, if it worsens, it'd be the same thing that a doctor would say if you're looking at any other symptom, right? Does it change? Is there anything you've done that has affected any change in your food, in your movement, in your writing, all the tools that we have in our toolbox? Does anything change? And the body knows whether we're trying to take action or not, right? So even making a call to a therapist or reaching out to a friend, even if we don't reach them, that can make us feel better. So paying attention, is it changing? We don't want to have unchanged depression or worry or anxiety and building, because then we know what's going to happen is that it's just going to continue to get worse. So we want to try to intervene, trying something different. I like to call it disrupting patterns. When we disrupt patterns, what happens is that it isn't the same anymore. So we're always changing and evolving and moving, even if it doesn't feel like we are. So thinking about things differently, taking action, and reaching out, talking about it, seeing if that is enough to disrupt that pattern. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Let's list some disruptors, and I'm going to ask you based on quadrants. So thinking about toolbox. So mechanical quadrant. How do you disrupt the mental framework mechanically when you're stuck in that vicious cycle?
Mm-hmm. So self-talk, using your talk and yourself and your words so that they accurately reflect how you want them to be. A lot of people say, oh, I shouldn't do that, or I'll never be able to do that, or I've never been good at yoga, or I'm terrible at. So I talk about what is it that is the message that you're telling yourself. It's not going to happen. You're already setting yourself up for that. So even changing language, so hearing something and saying it like, I haven't been really feeling like it's working for me. I'm going to try it again today. Wow. Okay. That's different than I'm never going to, or I'm not good at it. Should. Well, if you don't feel like you want to do it, then don't do it. What do you want to do? What brings you joy? If someone says they do yoga, but you don't want to do yoga, then don't do yoga. What do you want to do? Do you want to take a walk? Do you want to listen to music? Do you want to take a bath? What is it? So understanding that we all are individuals and that there's no one size fits all. What fits you? And it's the idea of trying something and then figuring out what works. And if it doesn't work, move on to something different. So self-talk. I'm going to find out what works for me today. Is very different. Today.
That's good. Today. Okay.
Today on my A or B or C day, right? And recognizing that, accepting it, or I don't have the energy to try it today, but tomorrow morning, this is what I'm going to do. And those barnacles, how we get them off, I was thinking as you were talking, isn't just scrubbing, but it's also telling people around us I talk about a team, in our team, saying, I have these things that are sticking to me. I'm going to try to not do this as much. And so inform people. And can you help me? Or would you spot me? Just like with weightlifting. You don't want to lift a lot of weight. If you think about a barbell, you want spotters on your sides. because you don't want to crash and burn. You want to be able to be successful. And in order to be successful, some days are going to be better than others. We need to be able to use language and have people around us who get it.
Well, I heard you say some things. I want to just kind of ping pong them out.
Sure.
You said walking, yoga, and it makes me think of Lisa Yule. I'm going to say yoga teacher in air quotes because she's my yoga teacher, but I don't get there near enough and now less. But anyhow, she says motion is lotion. I repeat that probably 30 times a day in my mind. Motion is lotion, keep moving. And I tell my patients, especially in the segments when you're adjusting somebody, one thing in my self-care the last 8 weeks is one of my kids, associates actually practices less than a mile from my house. So I'm trying to, make sure I get adjusted every week to keep motion as lotion. So that's a good idea. You talked about, briefly, you talked about food. Yes. And I was talking with a friend of mine earlier today, Liz, and we were talking about different joint pain. And I said, you know what, we're all kind of eating differently than we normally eat. A lot of us are. And so maybe it's time to do a little mini reset. I'm doing a 5-day mini reset before the holiday and just trying to let go of some inflammation. And inflammation could be in words. It could be in chemistry. It could be in the energy. It could be the people around you. So
but
I heard that.
Action. So shaking things up, disrupting patterns.
Yeah.
So when we shake things up, we know that we're building strength. We're doing something different. And so I'm encouraged when people say, I'll say, did you do anything different in the last couple weeks? No, the same old, same old. But in conversation, they'll say, I did notice that somebody was talking and I've never really gotten to know them. So I went over and talked to them today, a neighbor, a coworker, whatever it is. Oh, and so that created a connection. So small changes that we can't always see because we're always in a constant state of motion, movement, even if we can't see it. So we're not going to be the same after the show as we were before. We're learning, we're growing, we're evolving. And you talked about it at the beginning of your show, 5 years. That seems like a significant amount of time, right? And being able to look at how maybe it doesn't seem in the moment that things are moving or changing, even in that specific quadrant, they are. So, and then they become just what you do, habit. People talk about routines, easier said than done. But to try to, like you say, have things that are non-negotiable. I'm going to move my body. If I don't do it in the morning, I'm going to do it at lunch. If I can't do it at lunch, how can I do it in the evening? Even stretching. So movement. Yes.
Motion is ocean. I want to talk about boundaries and can people have healthy boundaries as they're navigating this time. And that I wanted to tag on to something you said. What I love about having this conversation, I love that it's not so rigid. So thank you for that. Is I was talking with my friend Marquita this week, and we were talking about Black Lives Matter and how do you have a conversation? And I loved what she said, and I need to repeat it. She said, people know your heart. And so we talked about knowing your neighbors. I'm going to encourage all of us to reach out to our Black friends and say, you know what, educate me. What should I be reading right now? What should I be watching? What do I need to know to help be a part of the solution? Because we're in such a historical time. I really believe that. I get chills, and this is how Spirit talks to me. We're in such a historical time of change right now. All right, but let's talk about boundaries. Mm-hmm. So what do healthy boundaries look like in general? And then what do they look like with COVID?
So healthy boundaries in general look like knowing yourself well enough to know what works for you and what doesn't. And it's a process of learning. So you don't always know, but big family gatherings are always a great example where people come together, everything comes to a head. And you might feel irritated, angry, having reactions. So just being able to process that and figure out what was it about a situation that I was uncomfortable with, and being able to then try to take a different course of action, something that works better. For instance, are you able to host next week? A quick reaction might be yes. A different reaction might be, let me think about it. I'm not sure. I'll get back to you. So slow, thoughtful responses are examples of boundaries. So when we need to make a quick reaction or decision, it's usually not a great one. It isn't about creating boundaries. It's about reacting to what's happening, feeling a sense of responsibility or guilt. A time during COVID, what a boundary looks like is, when this when this sign is on my door that I'm in session, please do not make any noise. Around that. Whether that happens right now, there's a tornado siren going on, so I don't know if you can hear it or not. So we can put forth our best effort to try to create boundaries around space, around what's working, what's not, and really taking that breath, taking a moment to think, what am I okay with? Am I okay with this? Am I not? And just letting people know what you expect. So if people are living together, spending time together, overlapping work, family, what is it that we can do to separate? And I just saw something recently that I read by a colleague of mine that said, to separate the work day from the family day or afterward, they had sort of like a happy hour. Now, it doesn't have to have alcohol, but some separation. So that's what boundaries is. Think about a road. There are times on the road where it's a solid line where you cannot pass. And then there's times where it's a dotted line where you can pass. And then it's a time where it's solid and dotted where there's no lines. And so being able to figure out how you navigate and how you move within a space, that's what a boundary is.
Nice job explaining that. The word that came to mind when you were talking about that, and I was sharing with one of my young people last night, we were talking about overcommitting, which may be a problem of mine. May need to talk to a therapist about that. But we were talking about overcommitting and pausing and say, you know what, let me think about that. Let me pray on that the next 24, 48 hours instead of saying yes right away and then getting anxious about why did I say yes. So I like the word pause. What when I say that word, what's it kind of bring up?
I think it's a great word. It helps to, I like to say that this time is sort of like driving through a rainstorm. And I know in Kansas City, there's lots of rain. So you get that, where rain is just coming at us and we can't process and we can't see, right? There's low visibility. Best thing to do in that situation where the wipers don't go fast enough is to move off to the side of the road safely and pause. And so that's why I like this term. This is a pause until it's safe to get back on the road. And so when we're giving more energy than our energy input, when we've maybe overcommitted, and we all do that, move off to the side of the road, take that deep breath, think for a minute, how do I want to spend, what can I do to energize or reboot, and then, can I see when I get back on the road? And if so, then it's safe to go. But it's not safe to go if it's, if we're in the middle of a rainstorm.
Well, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I've been in lots of rainstorms lately and I need to pull over on the side of the road and take a deep breath and go, oh my goodness. So I know we got people live on Facebook watching this. If you have questions for Deborah, please feel free to put them in there and Eleanor get them to us on Zoom. So now's a great time as we start to round out the show. I do want to ask you about, a lot of people want to help people. So, how do you manage helping others during these difficult times and what gives you energy?
How do I manage helping people or how do other people?
How are you managing it? And what are some tips for people?
Yeah, so how I manage it is thinking about my energy output and my energy input. We all have a finite amount of energy. Even though we have a desire to do a lot, we really need to first make sure that we're grounded and that we can see through this rainstorm. So I try to do that. I try to take pauses, especially when I wake up in the morning. The best thing is for me to think about waking up slowly, intentionally, thinking about the words and the atmosphere that I want for the day, even though I know I can't always control that, so that I can start with an intention of that. Tips are, don't try to take care of somebody, but supporting somebody, encouraging somebody is very different. I think that sometimes when people try to take care of others, it is received as sort of feeling disrespectful. Because when we take care of other people, what are we really saying? We're saying, you don't know how to take care of yourself, or we don't feel like you're equipped to do it. And we're all equipped to take care of ourselves, even if we need help. So being there, listening, just listening. Don't tell people what to do. That's, I guess, the greatest thing, biggest tip. And when we're in small quarters, it's very hard to do. We can say, I really want, you should, and then just zip it. Just pull over to the side of the road and get out of the way. Again, practice. But nobody likes to be told what to do. So.
Okay, here, we need to have a quote for this. Pause and zip it. No? Yes. Pause before you zip it before you pause. I'm just trying to think about the play on words there. Holy moly, such great wisdom and advice today, and I've got so many takeaways. And we talked about doing the show about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and I sure needed it today. And so I'm so glad it was perfect for July 1st, 2020, that we're sharing and we're celebrating you. You've given us some wonderful guidance about when you're in a rainstorm, pull over.
Yes,
and
pull over.
And
yeah, we learn from one another. I often learn from you and others. And so I too then feel inspired going forward, and new ideas, new nuggets, new perspectives.
Definitely new perspectives today. Well, I'm hoping if you've heard something new today that you would consider joining our movement. Small changes, big shifts, and there'll be notes on how to do that in the show notes here in the Facebook feed as well. We'd love to invite you on the conversation. I'd love to hear what is your nugget from the show today. I told you my nugget right now is you're in a rainstorm, and you know what? We're all in somewhat of a rainstorm, and sometimes it's pouring down on us, and sometimes it's just misting. How can you pause to take care of yourself there? Deborah, I want to wrap up the show, and I want to ask you a couple more questions as we do that. If you had a magic wand during this time, not pre-COVID, but right now, during COVID, what would you do?
I would hope that I would sprinkle some hug dust, meaning, people, we need physical touch, and that leads to isolation. And so I might just, they've had those pictures where people are in plastic and they can hug their loved ones. Just to sprinkle some of that around, because even though we are physically distanced, we are not socially distanced. And so, just to touch, hold, hug, that would be what I would hope for and give to people. It would help. And so I think the hug can be looked at in many different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical, but just to feel heard is a hug too. Feel understood.
Somebody said, I'm going to get you one of those suits so you can give people hugs.
That's right.
Like, I'm not sure it'd be very convenient moving around all day, and then I have to change suits after every hug. And I've missed hugging. I think it's probably, one reason why I'm struggling is that touch. I'm fortunate I'm getting to touch people, but it's a different when you're able to touch people's hearts. Yes. And it's definitely we call it the struggle bus. How do we navigate through the struggle bus here? And I think we navigate by staying together and supporting each other and listening and encouraging. I've loved seeing your smile today. You've always been so kind to me. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I love being a part of this.
Well, you mentioned our Wellness Consortium, and this is hopefully being live streamed to our Wellness Consortiums right now and to that page. And so if you're in the Kansas City community, or if you're not in the Kansas City, if you're in Minneapolis or you're in Chicago, we're virtual now. I'd encourage you to join this movement as we support each other and we get nuggets to help each other navigate not just today, but the tomorrows, and we get to tomorrows by living today. And so pause, pull over in the rainstorm. Exactly. Good takeaways today. So Deborah, I'd love to end with a quote.
Sure.
What's your quote for the day?
There's so many to choose from. It's hard. It really is. I was going to do another one, but here's what I'm going to say. Change is opportunity. Change is opportunity. And it's not mine. Change brings opportunity, but it's nido qui ben. And I have to remind myself of that. I like to think about it. I like to use it. So that's one. And I just want to share with you something that I got from a colleague in Minneapolis, which I just thought was great because it's light. So yesterday, was Taco Tuesday, right? And just like tacos are delicious and messy, she quoted life lessons in tacos. It's okay if you fall apart sometimes. Tacos fall apart and we still love them. I thought that was great.
That is great. Well, we'll have to maybe get that to Eleanor so she can share that. Yes,
Absolutely.
I feel like yes, I'm that week. This is an interesting week in my life every year, so it's fascinating to be walking through it. So once again, if you found something on the show, please share it with friends. Let's not take our freedom for granted. And during this special week of Independence Day, I want to, the word bridge has been a word that's been in my life the last 20 plus years. I heard one time on that spirit side, it said to me, Michelle, you're a bridge. You're a bridge between holistic medicine and traditional medicine. And I feel like the bridge is even different now. And so how can we all be a bridge to help our planet heal, to help our neighbors heal, to help us heal through COVID, whether you're wearing a mask, whether you're social distancing, whether you are doing everything you can to help yourself stay well, so that I say this host is not hosting any COVID virus. And I did take a test yesterday, and just so you know, I was clean. So, or Monday, someday this week, Emily helped me do that. Hey, here's my quote for this week, and it's one that I worked on with my friend Marquita. We were talking about being a bridge builder and building relationships intentionally with daring, guiding, engaging souls. So go out and be a bridge builder. Let's see what kind of magic we can continue to create on this planet. I'm sending you all lots of love, really big heart-to-heart hugs, and hey, try to get off some of those barnacles this weekend so that you can love more present and be more intentional with your life. All right, blessings to all of you. Hey, we'll chat soon. I sure appreciate you listening to Small Changes, Big Shifts. If you go to the website, smallchangesbigshifts.com, we'll have the show notes ready for you there. If this episode inspired you to make a small change that will lead to a big shift, please share with a friend. You can catch our episode on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. And if you feel like it, please leave a rating or a comment. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch our episode next week. Blessings to you.